Hi, Christopher. I'm Sarah from the Upcoming. So lovely to chat to you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And really exciting to talk about this upcoming show. Something's happening in real life, not virtual, finally.
Yes, I know. It's been a year and a half since my last performance because I performed in December 2019 and I was working on a premiere like in March. So we were shut down just before the premiere. So yeah, I didn't get to even perform in before the early period. So I'm really, really excited for that, to be back on doing my thing and performing and being live, and it's nice.
Yeah. And as I think everyone else is just so excited about the prospect of being able to see and experience art, with other people and in a physical space rather than trying to just enjoy everything from their living room.
Yeah.
But maybe we could just kick off with a brief introduction to My Body's an Exhibition. If you could just
Mhm.
give people a taste, in case they're wondering about coming to see it, what can people expect?
Oh, well, they'll expect a lot, actually. It's the show. Well, I come from a background in dance and choreography. I've worked in more traditional companies, doing ballet, modern dance, also a bit of TV. But more recently, I have been working with making kind of dance installations for gallery spaces. So when this proposition came, it was basically, I was like, well, I don't use the stage, so well, how about we turn this building into like an exhibition space? So people will sort of kind of experience dance as an exhibition. So there are also live works, there's film works, there also are collages and photo prints. And so there's quite a lot of different ways of expanding dance and choreography that isn't just sort of in the normal sitting in the theater, beginning, middle, and end. The whole thing is durational.
Mm.
And actually, even the event itself has even become more durational due to COVID measures. So everyone will follow through the theater in a one-way path. And actually, in a way also too, we get to expose areas of the theater that people don't usually get to go in. So some of the rehearsal rooms, in the dressing rooms, they'll be walking up and down the stairs that usually just the tech crew and the performers will use. So the space itself becomes really important.
Mm.
So that's what people should expect. I mean, the other thing is that, a little bit about the show and its concept, it comes from a lyric from a Janet Jackson song. And for me, Janet Jackson she's an inspiration. And so in a way, I use this lyric to think about also if you're going to go to the theater and see dance differently, how does that role between watching and or at times maybe the audience will be watched also. So it's playing with this kind of passive and also active roles as an audience member and as a performer.
Mm.
So that's kind of also where the concept comes from.
Mm. And what sort of sparked the idea? Because you say obviously you seem like you're a fan of Janet Jackson. Why was it that track or that lyric that stood out to you? And how does that capture that theme in a way of this idea of the way we look at performers, famous people perhaps, so there's
Mhm.
kind of that objectification, but then there's also the flip side of the body as performance, as part of art in a way. So how do those threads kind of fit together for you?
How they work is it comes from it comes from the sort of body politics within my in my like career. Even though I have performed in classical like company, classical ballet, I've always also felt that I have had a kind of body that I've always had. I'm shorter. I've always had been a bit pudgier. So in a way, I started to always realize that my work as a dancer wasn't necessarily about the movement I was doing, but about the way I looked and if I could fit into the roles. You know, and when I was really dancing in ballet, I never played a prince. So, you know, like, and it's because Prince, they have that kind of, they're tall, they're long, they have this kind of look. And so I was always a townsperson or the Rat King. So you know, this is something I've been trying to think about in my work. Now that I've been working in visual arts, is really questioning the way the body is an image, the way it's an, you know, that dance itself is also a visual image that people are looking at. And that means that the body is an object. But I guess too, I realize that that there's a feedback loop happening between a performer and the audience. So okay, if I'm going to portray something, how do I then get the audience to see what I'm supposed to do? And that's through craftsmanship. So that's kind of where I started to explore that. And where Janet Jackson came in, I mean, she's just always there in my work. I guess too, I've been trying to kind of, I'm obsessed with dance history, and I've been trying to kind of rethink dance history, queer it a bit, see where some of the questions that I never questioned before in dance history, like around masculinity, around class structures, that are just kind of implicit in there. You know, you have always the royal families, and then you have the townspeople. There we are, class structure. You know, it's always a man wooing a woman or a man lifting a woman. And so, I mean, there we go. We have our gender identities, or gender roles that describe everything. And I started to question this, but I also wanted to question it so that it wasn't kind of angry. It could also be fun. It could be that. And so I've also tried to align dance history with pop culture. So, lots of works. I mean, I was making a video work. I made a video work several years ago that that was completely inspired by the kind of facial choreography of like Nicki Minaj. You know, how could I just play with like smizing and just really showing something really fun and just, you know, and that kind of portrait choreography that happens in music videos. I guess the only thing I haven't really done in my life is danced with a pop star. And so I think that's what I'm just trying to do through my art, is in my own way, dance with a pop star. I mean, I hope Janet comes to see the show, because then I'll get to dance with Janet for the first time. So yes, I'm always trying to think about how also dance history can be like pop music, can be like pop music, like music videos and that kind of performance. So Janet, again, I don't know, it was there. And this line, someone once, another artist sang this line to me, and it has just stayed with me. And I have dwelled on it for years. So when I decided to make this show, that line was just there. It was always there. But it's kind of conceptual. I mean, there are more direct. There are more direct sort of things that are a nod to Janet or a nod to also other pop stars. And then there are other things where I'm allowing people, the unknown artist within the exhibition. And I say unknown meaning in the sense that they're not public figures, but within their work, they portray this kind of icon celebrityism in themselves. There's a beautiful film by Myrid Carton, and it's these women in Ireland in a Wetherspoons in the bathroom, putting on their makeup, checking themselves out, you know, ready for a Friday night in a nice Wetherspoons pub. And again, for them, it's about this beautification, this Hollywood image, you know, and that's, so each of the works are having that kind of identity within them.
And it was interesting what you're mentioning there about, you know, dance being as much about your form as well as the movements you're doing. And do you see, perhaps it's surprising also to remember that can be the case for male dancers as much as female dancers. So do you think there's something that's distinct though still about female bodies being objectified in a very particular way? And I don't know if it's slightly tenuous, but I was thinking with Janet Jackson, that thing that happened at the Super Bowl, which obviously was years ago now, but the way, you know, the female form is almost, you know, kind of very over sexualized, but then there's a boundary that cannot be crossed, and, you know, kind of the politics you might see all around the female form in that way. So I wonder if that's any of those are issues.
Yeah, I mean, in my own work, I try not to question the female form, because I am not an expert in the female form, and then I am a male making a comment on the female form. So I try to always kind of also keep that away. But what I am questioning in my work is the male form. My own individual works. I mean, again, this show has 25 works by 11 different artists, but they all are questioning the body, and it's in a way of either sexualizing it or even how it's being viewed or distorted. But in my own personal work, growing up as a kind of working class male in a military conservative town, you know, I'm masculinity, but also not having a very, you know, like not like, you know, my father was a mailman, but then I wanted to go to dance, and there weren't other boys in dance. So I was always looking to these dance historical males to help me find my way or to understand my place. And so I am questioning the male body or the male identifying body in dance history. And also too, I think that we have changed body politics for female bodies, especially in pop music and pop dance, but also in more traditional concert dance. You know, you're seeing different shapes. You're seeing a dancing body, and if a body dances, it's a dancing body. But you're seeing that with female dancers, but we haven't gotten there yet with male dancers. I feel like male dancers still have that form, and you don't see larger male dancers performing. You don't see them you don't see them recognized, where I think there has been lots of protesting, and we've gotten to a place where all female bodies are welcome in dance. I haven't found that yet for male dancers. And so that is still something I'm quite questioning, or trying to push, and maybe unapologetically put my body out there. So yeah, I try not to engage in the conversation, because I don't think it's right, being a male choreographer, to present the female body. But I've invited female artists who are doing that, like Myrid, or Nashika Netarel is another person who has a film in here, and she's using her own body and making a collage out of her of images out of her body for you to question or for you to kind of see herself questioning her own self as a muse. So it's so I have invited the other experts to talk about that.
And do you see that something like, you know, these sorts of exhibitions can prompt conversation and kind of shift the needle slightly? Like, what role do you see that the arts can play? And I guess you can, although it's one particular niche, you could see it's also connected to the fashion world, like, you know, sort of catwalk models, or, you know, what we see on like film and TV, and so on and so forth. So, you know, what do you see the role of your particular art form in changing perspectives?
I guess for me, changing perspective is putting something there and having it have the openness for that dialogue to happen. And I guess, you know, one of the things I've always been cautious of, because like working with dramaturgs and art historians, is, you know, it's always been this kind of thing to not say something with your work, like not say this is it. So what I've tried to do with my work, and also in the show, the selections of pieces, is that they can be read from many layers. You can watch them, you can enjoy them, they're all fun, there's pop, but then you can really sit with them and start to be like, wait a second, you know, there's something going on here. and it may challenge my thought, or it may or it may affirm something I was already thinking. So I allow people those entry points. I mean, I don't have a company, but I whenever I present my work, I always present it under this title form view, and that has a few different meanings. And one of the meanings is that I'll shape the view, but I'll allow the audience to make their decisions and how they want to watch it, how much they want to engage and question and start that feedback loop that I was talking about. The other aspect of the form view is also to acknowledge that as a choreographer, we're not the true or the only author of the work. So I know that the dancers performing my work are creating the work in the moment of performing it. So that form view allows me to also to allow or acknowledge that others are part of this process, and to get out of this historical idea too, that we here's the choreographer and they have all this prestige and hierarchy and only their name should be known, and then here are the dancers. So again, it's questioning that celebrity style. And in this show, there's a couple really moments where we question celebrities, or the celebrity of an individual figure. There's an installation completely honoring the kind of ballet, kind of high art celebrity, but also how that portrays in the kind of nightclub culture. So, there is, and how being a public figure also means needing to be with the public, to party with the public, to be drinking with the public. And so there's elements of that happening too. So yeah, I answered many questions there. So.
And you sort of mentioned, a couple already, but maybe you want to just give us a brief idea of some of the other artists that are also going to be part of the exhibition, and how did you go about selecting the people you also wanted to present here?
Yeah, so for me, I have found myself in the past couple of years being a kind of curator within my work. So whenever I'm presenting a show or I'm presenting my own work, I found myself curating others around me. And that was the proposition for this show, was that I show my practice, but invite other artists. And so something as a curator I have, or my curatorial style, is that curation is social. I kind of feel like it's inviting people to a dinner party. And of course, there is the trying to find the historical, or trying to find all that things that art, traditional curating is. But maybe I'm queering curation too, by doing it in a different way. But I think it's social. So selecting the artist, I usually think about who do I know and who do I think should know the other? I'm trying to think about which two artists do I think they should know each other, and it doesn't mean exactly bringing them together to know each other, but by putting the work side by side. So maybe their works know each other by meeting in an exhibition. So this is how I kind of think about it. And so the first artist that I selected for when I was invited to do this show is an artist, Phoebe Berglund, who is an American choreographer who also works in visual art. And we met in Brussels while we both were doing a residency there and working on our own work. And we just vibed. And I just thought, she has some similar questions to me. She's also a geek about dance history like I am. And she's questioning the politics of dance. And she's also questioning, the politics of visual art using dance nowadays. And so I was like, Phoebe's the first one. And so I've actually commissioned Phoebe to make a new work. So you'll enter into the theater and you will be invited or start the experience with Phoebe's work, which is a kind of durational quartet that will rotate from being four to solos to duets, but it's always this form of a quartet. That will hit also some very dance and visual art historical pieces. I know they're utilizing the image of the nude descending the stairs. So there we are again, the female body is being questioned as you were asking earlier. And then, yeah, I mentioned Myriad's work. She's an Irish artist who's actually she's a filmmaker, but I think that her films are very choreographic. They're like, I relate them to like a Maya Deren kind of film history, who was studying film and choreography together. And so that's why I invited her. And Nashika is a performer that I've been working on with, I dance for a choreographer, Tadra Harel, and she's also in the show with me. And I started to ask her about her work. And I felt too that there was something that she's doing with the body, and also being an American and knowing the body is also a kind of commodified thing. So again, it was just obvious to invite her. But then there's also Fenia Kotsopoulou, who is a Greek choreographer, but mostly works with dance for camera. And again, we both won, we had these film works that won awards on this dance for camera festival, and we started to talk and started to realize we had similar interests around queer bodies and the presence of queer bodies in dance history. So that's where Fenia came from. And then during lockdown, I kind of had a show together, and then what happened was that the show got postponed. Then I had more time, and then the proposition got bigger. So it was supposed to be just taking up a small theater, and now I'm taking over the whole building of Sadler's Wells. So this is where I went from 5 works to 27. So then I started to see things of my friends making work during the pandemic. And then also too, I found myself exploring new avenues during the pandemic. A friend of mine, Songhae Tolden, is a dancer in Zurich at a state theater, and they were closed. So the theater propositioned to them that they could make whatever they want. And he made a film on the stage of that theater. And at one point you see the stage, the audience of that theater. And I just was sitting in Sadler's audience during a tour of the space. And I was just like, wouldn't it be amazing to see in this theater looking through to another theater? And that's where it all came from. So yeah, so there's a few more of the artists. And again, it's all really casual, but it's also about these people need to be in the same dinner party. They all need to be here partying together. So yeah, that's kind of where how I kind of got started. And again, how do you fill this whole building? It's massive. It's really, really massive. I was a few minutes late because I was like on the other side of the theater at the moment, trying to like look at the installation and be like, ooh, do we do this, do that? And I'm like, oh, gotta go. So
and you're sort of mentioning there like work you've been doing like throughout the pandemic. It's obviously been catastrophic for a lot of the cultural industries and really tough, but have there been any upsides, space to create a bit of space away from the limelight? And how optimistic are you feeling for the future? Do you think everything's going to bounce back, or have we lost something crucial that we can't get back? I don't know, how do you feel about it?
I think I mean, there's always something good that's come out of it. I do think there's some issues around. I feel like, yeah, of course, people not having work, and so people having to do different things or try different things. I've seen a lot of artists start working with new mediums. Like, I feel like everyone is taking up collage, and that's amazing. And maybe in a few years I'll have all these dance collage exhibitions, because during the pandemic, it just became a genre I just saw around me, myself included. But again, it's so I feel that people chose new mediums. I do think also one of the positive things is that people slowed down a bit. And also this urgency that's always about making, about the urgency to produce, to refine, to, you know, and I think people just kind of went back to the experimentation. And so, and I feel that, yeah, there's this kind of, like, I think we were just getting too boiled up before the pandemic, and now everyone's a little bit like, it's okay, it's fine, we're gonna make it work, we're gonna make it happen. Give me some tape, I'll put it together, you know. So there's that positive. So I feel like things will be this. I do think one of the nice things is that on a global scale, you're able to, the whole digital aspect has really made it possible for people to see work that they would not necessarily. I don't think it replaces being in the theater, as you mentioned before. I went to the Royal Opera House to see the Royal Ballet, and I didn't realize, but I just wanted the £15 tickets because that's what I was like, can afford it for the, and I was like, and I had beautiful seats, but I was like, oh, this is opening night, okay. And this roar from the audience. The orchestra sat down and the audience roared with just being of like mourning the loss of liveness that you were talking about, being in a room together, seeing the dance live. And so I think, yeah, there has been this beauty of rejuvenating the audience's desire for the arts. So that's going to be, I think that's also, it's going to be really nice after the pandemic. And I hope that we can hold on to this hunger for live art, and also a hunger or appreciation for the arts, and that I think people are ready for. But I'm glad that also that people are questioning the digital, because just putting up a dance on the digital screen is okay, great, you know, but now there's a form that we need to investigate if we're going to be working with more digital art. I know that like the young Vic are looking at opportunities of doing multiple cameras, and so that the audience can still choose the way they look, even though it's on a digital format. And so these conversations are happening. I think that's really nice. Because I think people forgot that sometimes they don't always watch the performance all the time. Like I sit in the theater and like sometimes look at the lights and then look back at the stage, you know, and that. So I think that people started to realize that their attention was taken when you watch live performance, it's taken all over. So I think that's really a nice thing to come out of it. But we have to get back to supporting independent artists. That's an issue I think that needs to be addressed after the pandemic. There was always an issue supporting the independent artists. Big companies and you're seeing the return of big companies, but you're not seeing the independent artists. And I feel really blessed to be at Sadler's Wells as an independent artist amongst all these other companies, you know. And so it feels really like an honor to be like, okay, I'm here. But again, we need to support raising up independent artists in the art form. So
I think I'm almost out of time, but the other thing I wanted to ask is, I was watching your YouTube videos, and I actually used to dance when I was younger, and I haven't for ages. And the first thing I wanted to do was go and do a dance class. So it was like, what is it that's also specific about performing, about dance? You know, we're talking about how it looks to watch a performer, but I think there's also the other side of dance, which is in the performance, which is in the joy of the movement. So, you know, do you think that's a big part of it as well, that sometimes gets lost when we're always looking at how things look rather than how things feel to do?
Completely. I feel also something I have felt in the year and a half is I felt like I haven't been myself, or I'm missing myself, because when I perform, I have all this agency to either be someone I'm not, or to express myself in a bigger, bolder way, or to say something I want to say that, you know, so yeah, I feel to perform is, you know, there's something really beautiful and vulnerable, and you don't get that. And it actually, you also don't get that in the digital too. You know, I feel like we've lost a bit of vulnerability in general from everyone zooming and all that stuff. A friend of mine was talking, being like, I think we all lost our social skills because of this kind of waiting to speak and then speak. And so, yeah. And I'm like, I know. So the thing is yeah, there's this feeling that's inside you when you perform. It's very chemical as well. Like it is chemical. It's, you know, you are moving, things are happening from your brain, and then things are happening, you know, your muscles are getting lactic acid. There's loads of things that are happening from an organic level that are not there. Deborah Hay says that we have like 1 billion cells, and how can we dance with all those cells? And she's so true. And I feel like even dancing in our living rooms or on just dance for camera, like we haven't gotten on that cellular level. And I'm ready for the juices to happen. Sometimes you release so much, like after a performance, maybe I just need to sit and cry, or I need to laugh, or, you know, like it's so, and that's not happening, and it will happen soon. So yeah, performing has a different feeling. As you say, it's nice to watch, but also too, it's nice to be. And I don't feel like I've been myself. So yeah.
And do you hope that it'll become less elitist in future, that more people will get that experience? Because, you know, if people think, oh, dance isn't for me, ballet isn't for me, you know, I've got to look like this, I've got to be from this background, you know, actually people are missing out on a form of therapy or a form of enjoyment, you know.
They really are, and it's a real problem. And I come from a working class background, and the only reason I'm in dance is because it was part of our school system. So I went to a performing arts school. My parents didn't have to pay for it. So, you know, and I finding it is a problem that it's becoming an art form that's too expensive. Dance, visual art, all these things are just too expensive, and we need to find ways to open it up. But that comes from interest, that comes from encouragement, that also comes from a governmental level. We need dance and art in schools. We need to fund people to go to dance. We need to fund people to go to the theater. And I will never forget, you know, being in a middle, like being a young middle schooler, like 8 and 9, and our teacher taking us to the opera. And at school, and it's because the opera company in our local town would open up the dress rehearsals, and we would get on a school bus and we would go, and actually she would take us to dinner. So we went out to eat. We all had the full like posh experience of eating spaghetti in a restaurant and then going to the opera house, and she required us to dress up. But it was, you know, it was trying to, of course what art was originally done is to create social levels, but still it was an introduction to culture that I think that's why I am who I am. I mean, also I am who I am from Fame, the television show, and Janet Jackson, you know, because, you know, like I was at 5, but like, I'm gonna be a dancer because I watched Fame. But also too, because this teacher took me to the opera, and that, but again, we need to fight the system and make it more available for everyone. Ticket prices need to be lower. Ticket prices need to be free. You know, like we need to find ways that people can see art, and also not just art on screen. Like I think that's different. It feels more like cinema and not live art. So yeah, let's find ways. Let's brainstorm.
And just very quickly, what will you be doing after Sadler's Wells? Do you want to tell us a bit about what might happen after that? Any other things in the pipeline?
Yeah, actually, I'm really happy that the world is starting to open up. So the 6:15 in the morning on Sunday morning after the show, I'll be going to Bordeaux to perform in another show. I'm like, wow, one show to the next. So, and then, but I also, every year I work at Impulse Tanz, which is a dance festival in Vienna. And so I'll be going to Vienna for 3 weeks to perform, to teach. And so to be doing that, and then I'm back in London working on some new work. So I'm also happy to be back, to be making things and having this performance. It's really reminded me that like keep making, because it's, you know, the more you make, the more opportunities there are. So yeah, so there's a few things in the immediate, and then there's also the rejuvenating, the kind of constant, as an artist, you're just always working. So yeah, there's some fun stuff coming up.
Amazing. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. It was such a pleasure to speak to you, and yeah, very exciting. Hope the Sadler's Wells goes well, and the rest of your summer plans. So thanks so much for speaking to us.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Bye.
Bye. See you. Bye. Have a good day. See you.